Do we really see ships going over the curve? Now, if we do, that's going to start to happen at between 3 and 4 miles. I mean, at 4 miles, you should be losing 10 feet worth of a ship. At 5 miles, it'd be almost 17 feet worth of the ship. 6 miles, 24, 7, almost 33 feet, and so forth. So Jaron did a really good video commenting on some footage shot by a woman named Lori Frary. And I'm just going to play a little clip from his video right here regarding the whole issue of boats allegedly going over the curve.
All right, let's take a look at some film now. Thank you, Lori Ferrari, for letting me use this video. I believe she filmed it off the coast of Florida. And she stayed with it a good 25 minutes. And in the description will be the link to the full video. So I'll be pointing out some things as we go along so that we can start to see exactly what's happening. Now, if you look in the background, you can probably see some buildings back there. That is not a mirage, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But a mirage would be distorted. It would have a haze effect or a watery look. And it's also not any kind of superior mirage in which things are lifted up above the water. Those buildings are just the outlines of the buildings that are actually there. So if you start looking underneath the red section of the tanker, you'll see a little white sliver showing up. And if you notice, that is just the reflection from the part of the boat, the bridge, above it. So if it's reflecting, what would it be reflecting on? It appears to be reflecting on air, doesn't it? But we know that's not what's happening. It's actually reflecting off the water, which has taken the exact color of the sky. Again, you can also keep an eye on the choppy water. You'll see she zooms out and you can almost lose it right there. I can't see it. It appears to be gone, and this is what the ancients saw. They thought the boat went over the curvature or the horizon. But we zoom back in and there it is. Now you'll notice that little white section is even more pronounced than before. The reflection is getting larger. You also see these high point waves. And you also see that band area that they call the mirage zone or the mirage band. And now you can really start to see that that boat looks like it's floating on air, but actually that is water out there that is being miraged by the sun. Same kind of mirage you see at the end of a long freeway or in the desert. That's the same thing you see there. But of course they wouldn't tell you that. So we'll zoom out again, watch that boat. Looks like it almost goes over the horizon there. And we'll zoom back in. And we can see it just scooting along on what looks like invisible air. So if you notice here in the two boxes, right and left, that the wave chops are, which would be 5 to 10 feet high. We know the waves aren't that big. Then you'll also see the black line separating where the water actually is versus where it appears to us to be. Now you'll notice that white bridge reflection is a lot bigger. But by zooming in, we can pick it back up. You'll see now that the white bridge section has almost become the same color as the sky. It no longer has a lot of the markings that it had before. In fact, I think we'll see it here within the next 20 seconds turn into the sky. You'll see the front end of the boat is completely chopped up now. And all that is a mirage. Nothing is floating above where it should be. It does happen on occasion, and that is called a fata morgana. But now you'll see that reflection plus the bridge of the boat has all turned into the same color as the sky. And the boat is almost completely broken up. zoom out, there'd be no way you'd see that with your own eye. It looks almost as if two ships are moving along out there.
All right, I'll stop there. If you want to watch the rest of that, I put the link to Jaren's video and the link to Lori's video in the description below. But this is a great shot right here showing that the boat didn't go over any curve. And it's way out there. And it's going straight out into atmospheric distortion. The density of the atmosphere between the boat and the viewer is getting thicker and thicker and thicker, and it's causing all kinds of atmospheric distortions, and you're starting to get some mirage effects right there. Now, I saw something very similar while visiting my family in Florida. I had my Nikon Coolpix P900, and I was watching ships go out to sea. Here's a short clip from an interview I did on Patricia Steer's show with Patricia and Mark Sargent regarding what I saw. You see all the waves and all the detail in the water, and then there's this hard line. You can see the waves, but it's a hard line right there. And when the ships got to that line, they didn't start disappearing hull first or at all. They just started flying off into space. That's what it looks like. Yeah. They went right past that hard line. I'm going this way. So going right past the hard line, and then it literally looks like, because it's a hard line, and then beyond that, it's just kind of like the same color as the sky. Yeah. Which at that time was the color, orangish sunset. They start floating up into the sky, but you can tell they're still on water because you can see the reflection of the ship on the water. And I can see them go all the way out until they eventually, it gets really distorted at this point. You do run into mirage issues, but I mean, you can watch them flying off into the sky, reflecting on the water until they eventually morph into this blob that you can't really make any details out in it. But that's easily out to 4 miles, if not a little bit past that. Never did I see anything disappear to the camera's eye. To my eye, regular eye, sure, you can imagine the illusion of the hull disappearing first, but not through the camera. So, as you can see, here's a still frame of the boat way out there, at least 4 miles out. I should be losing 10 feet of the ship, but I mean, even though it's distorted with the mirage there, you're not seeing 10 feet of that ship missing. You're not seeing just the top of the ship. You're seeing the whole thing out there. Now it's all wavy and distorted, but it's there. And here's another video by another YouTube channel, Godrules, talking about the same kind of thing, with the other people sending in footage of ships that they're watching with high-powered camera zooms and telescopes. Same thing. They're not seeing ships disappear.
When the chimneys of the ferries disappeared under the water, I used my binoculars. So in other words, with his eyesight, he looked at this ferry, and when the chimney had gone beneath the water horizon, okay, so it looked like it went over the horizon, as they claim, like, oh, it looks like the ship sailed over the horizon. So it actually went completely under the horizon at normal eyesight, is what he's saying. Okay, so he said it disappeared under the water. I used and then he pulled out his binoculars to look, and the ferry was there again. It popped up again. So in other words, when he looked with his plain sight, the ferry is over the horizon, as they claim. But then he took out his binoculars and looked at it, and there the ferry is. It didn't go over the horizon. You could see the bottom of the ferry. You could see the entire ferry. When it disappeared in my binoculars, so it was continuing to sail away from him. So now he's looking through his binoculars until it disappeared with his binoculars. I switched over to the telescope immediately, and the ferry appeared in its entirety again. So in other words, every time you got a stronger magnification, the ferry's back there again in front of you. It didn't go over the horizon.
So more and more people are doing the same thing. They're taking cameras, they're taking telescopes, they're taking binoculars, they're going to the beach and they're watching ships going out to sea, and the more they zoom in, there it is. Now, there are sometimes issues where the hull is starting to disappear, and I dealt with that a little bit in one of my early videos, where I show a possible reason for that could be that it's actually a mirage effect. I'm going to suggest that what we're seeing is the same exact effect that we see when a car disappears wheels first into a mirage. Now that may be the case, but let's go a little deeper. Now here's the other issue. People who think ships are disappearing over the curve in 3, 4, 5 miles distance. It's got to work both ways. I mean, if we're on a ball, then when the ship is going away from you on the, let's say, the z-axis, going, from you to a point away from you, and it's rolling over the ball in 3 to 5 miles, then you should have the exact same effect looking left to right on the x-axis. You should be seeing ships rolling up to the top of the ball and rolling down on the lateral x-axis. If it's a ball, they got to be rolling both ways, away from you and side to side. We never see that though. You can go to the beach and do a panoramic shot and put a parallel line over it, and from end to end, and this is a lot more than just 5 miles, there's no perceived curvature here. None. Flat as a pancake. And in fact, these are some pictures I took on the beach at Malibu, California. And I went from there way up into the mountains above Pepperdine University and looked out. And I mean, easily there's got to be probably close to 100 miles left to right. The distance on the horizon there, it's got to be, quite a bit there. Put a parallel line over it, flat. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say ships are rolling over the ball on the z-axis without having the same exact perception on the x-axis. Okay, going back to this picture right here, showing the perception differences when you're zooming in and out. Here's another shot right here. This boat came into view as I was zooming out. Zooming out, and it rose higher on the horizon. See, when I was zoomed in on him, there's all this space right here from the bottom of the boat to the horizon, and when it's further away, that distance shrinks. So our eyes start playing tricks on us. Now, to better illustrate this, I created this little animation right here, and this represents about a mile worth of ocean. All right, so when you're looking, you can see the difference in how each of these ships looks like it's higher and higher up on the water level. Now that's on flat water, no waves at all. Now let's look at this same animation. I created some waves no higher than the height of the camera. In fact, a few times you'll see the camera go right through the waves, but the wave height was about as high as the camera, which was just a little bit above the water. Okay, so let's look at the same exact animation, this time with some waves. Okay, there's wave, 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 wave. Okay, over the distance here, the cumulative effect of the waves obscures the hull of ships. That's just what happens with the perspective. As the ships get higher and higher up on the horizon, as you get further and further away, and you have the compounding of the waves over that distance, it's really easy to see how you end up with the illusion of ships rolling over the ball when it has nothing to do with that at all. This is a flat plane. Here's the two pictures side by side, with flat water, with no waves, and then with waves. In both cases, the more distant ships rise up on the horizon, but in the picture on the right, you have the waves obscuring the hull, and over the distance it accumulates, so you lose more and more of it. The other big problem with the ships going over the curve argument is what happens to the horizon when you go up and down on the y-axis. When you go up on the y-axis, the horizon doesn't change. Now, let's assume we're looking at eye level right there, and the horizon's right across our eye level. When you rise up on the y-axis, the horizon stays at that same level. Well, maybe it's hard for you to see in this animation, so let me do more of a basic one right here. Here's the horizon right here. If I go down, it stays the same on a plane. And if I go up, it stays the same on a plane. That cannot happen on a ball. If you saw ships roll over the curve on a ball like this, the horizon's right there. The only way you're going to see that ship is to rise up on the y-axis, but when you do that on a ball, you lose it. Now, here's a more practical example. Just watch cars go over a hill. Get down on the ground. This is my iPhone. I put my iPhone on the ground. I'm watching cars drive by. There's a nice truck right there. They're about to go down a hill. And now here's the horizon right here. This is, the horizon to my camera. And if I want to see those cars, I just have to rise up on the y-axis. Now, I didn't keep it all steady right there, so as the camera comes back to pretty much the same level that the eye level of the camera, as it were, you see the distant horizon right there is the same. It's exactly the same. Now, again, that was sloppy because I was just doing it with an iPhone, and my hands didn't keep it exactly the same. But if you were to rise directly up on the y-axis with a camera on a tripod or a crane or something like that, you'd have the same exact thing that you observe anytime you've flown in an airplane. Doesn't matter how high you go, that horizon just follows right up with you outside your window. When you're sitting on the flight line, you look out, there's a horizon at a certain level, and when you fly up to 35,000 feet, that horizon stays at the same level. That cannot happen on a ball. On a ball, when you rise up on the y-axis, there's no way the horizon is going to rise with you, especially if you think ships rolled over that curve in 5 miles of distance. If you lost, 20, 30 feet of a ship disappearing over the curve, then just like the example of the cars, if you want to see those cars again, you got to rise up on the y-axis and look down at the ever-increasing slope of the hill to watch that, truck or car or whatever continue down the hill. The same thing should be if you're watching ships disappear over the ball on the z-axis in front of you, in 5 miles distance, and you're losing 20, 30 feet worth of the hull, then you should rise up on the y-axis, look down the ever-increasing curvature of the ball to see that ship receding away on the curve. But that doesn't happen. You see ships go away from you on the z-axis, but there's no indication of the same exact curve on the x-axis, and when you go up on the y-axis, the horizon pops up with you. That should not be if we're on a ball.